I'm so pleased to have a conversation with our guest artist Asiya Korepanova, who will be joining us for Pegasus's Orchestra Series opener on October 22nd at Merkin Hall, performing Clara Schumann's Piano Concerto. Asiya, you happen to be in New York City today because you had a recital yesterday playing Rachmaninoff's complete Etude tableaus, and as I understand, you've had this whole year dedicated to doing the complete works of Sergei Rachmaninoff, which is a monumental project.
Thank you.
And so we are lucky to have you in the city so we can have a little bit of chat for our upcoming concert. I wanted to ask you, what does Clara Schumann's concerto mean to you, personally? And what has been your creative process of getting into the work?
Clara Schumann's concerto is a very important moment for me because I heard this piece not too many times before in being in concerts live. This is a beautiful work that deserves much more widespread career of its own, and the fascination that everyone needs to have with this piece is about how it was written and about the music itself. And it's also about Clara Schumann being an example of an absolutely extraordinary talent. She started writing this concerto when she was just 13 years old. And it's quite mind-boggling because she wrote initially just one movement, which we now know as a final movement of this concerto. She wrote it and she orchestrated it herself, and even her future husband, Robert Schumann, helped her to orchestrate that movement initially for the first performance of it. Later on, in a year and a half, when she wrote additional two movements, and that became a concerto, and the first written movement became the final movement, she was brave enough to reject his corrections and reorchestrate the whole thing again herself, and in that form she performed it, and Felix Mendelssohn was the conductor of the premiere, which is amazing to think about these two people being on stage together. So for me, when I performed this piece, when I worked on it, and when I initially was learning it for my very first performance of it, I kept identifying myself with her and trying to think how I felt about myself when I was 13, 14, 15, and what she could have been as a person at that time. And when you just play through what she has written, it's almost difficult to believe that this kid, 13 years
Yes,
old, it's a kid,
Of course.
came up with such complex structure, with such beauty, elegance, and wit in everything, and such technical demands.
I was actually about to bring that up next, because when I was looking at the score myself, especially the way the coda of the last movement ends, first of all, I wondered, this 13-year-old, how big of hands did she have? And she must have had monstrous technique to be able to even play that, because obviously she had to play it.
Yes.
That's why she wrote it. So, and so it's fiendishly difficult in a way.
It is very difficult, and I would say it is particularly difficult on modern instruments and modern action of contemporary, Steinway's, Yamahas, and everything that we have today. When she was writing this piece, the instruments that were available to her were very different from what we are playing today. She probably was playing some of the Pleyel's pianos, and Pleyel's pianos had narrower keys, shallower run of the key. So any jumps and the coda of the finale that you're referring to, it's very much alike Liszt's Campanella,
Exactly.
which is dedicated to her, by the way. All these insane jumps that make most of pianists of today be very careful and take very, very mindful tempi of this concerto. Those jumps are not as devilishly difficult on that kind of piano. And I'm very lucky that I had an opportunity to play some of the Klegel's pianos and try different pieces on them, including the campanella and including parts of this concerto. So I know the experience for her performing it and writing it with that instrument in mind pretty much determined the texture of the piano text that she has written. But because action of contemporary pianos is heavier, the keys are bigger, they're going back and forth to the more depth, and the size of the instrument is much bigger, and so everything kind of becomes stronger, heavier, and needs more muscles.
Yeah.
So it adds to the difficulty of the original piece that she has written greatly.
Absolutely.
Which makes it more of a experience of pyrotechnics than it even was when she originally wrote it.
I want to shift gears here for a moment and talk about the entire program. And when we were originally speaking about the concerto, we were brainstorming about this program as a whole, and it's focused on Robert Schumann, Clara Schumann, and Johannes Brahms' musical triangle. And of course, Brahms came into their life so late at the last year of Robert Schumann, and they ended up becoming such close friends. And I'd love to talk a little more about this. But at the time when Clara was writing this concerto, there was no way Brahms could have been of any influence.
He was just being born
yes.
at that moment.
Exactly. But ironically, and this is what I want to discuss with you, is Schumann played a role. He meddled a little bit, right, in the orchestration, and of course, he was a great influence on her, obviously, in many ways. And then later on, she was, I think, reciprocated in a way and influenced him so much as well. But Brahms obviously had none. But then when I hear some of the performances or recordings of the concerto, I feel like the way, especially the orchestra part is played, has a little bit of a heavier Brahmsian approach to it, which does not make any sense to me, because to me, it's just a speculation here, of course, but it feels like that she might have been more inspired by Liszt rather than, again, Brahms didn't exist then. So it kind of brings the question of, why her innovative concerto, which is so, if you put in perspective at the time being written, is treated in a more traditional sense nowadays, where it could be, so much more can be done with it. So I wanted to talk a little bit on this subject with you.
To me, the fascination here is also, if you think about it, when we think about Brahms's piano concertos and we think about the famous second movement of B flat major concerto with the cello solo appearing with the opening of the movement, and how it blends with the piano and the prominent role cello has in this concerto. It's also, there's some weird connection somewhere in heaven,
Yes.
So I agree with you that her orchestration reminds me even a little bit of like C major symphony by Schubert, kind of more substantial voice to it, and like a very big German and powerful.
Exactly, that's the keyword, powerful. And so,
that also kind of gives you a hint about her, how she was as a human being.
Yes.
If you think about her, how she traveled with performances, having given birth to 8 children, and we can't even imagine these days to live the life that she was living, even though we have so many resources available to us today, and machinery and automation and everything. So if you think about the strength that she had in composing and tending to her children and tending to her husband, who was definitely not an easy husband to have, and if you also think that Johannes Brahms consulted with her his entire life and would show her all of his works and listen to her criticism, like, you don't ask just a random person
No.
for a criticism.
Especially someone as stubborn as Brahms. I mean, he was known for.
Exactly. So this paints an extraordinary picture of an individual who was much more probably than we know about her, and at the same time, we regret for sure that she didn't have an opportunity to have a more prolific compositional career.
I agree.
And there are lots of speculation that Robert kind of pushed her a little bit aside from that, and that is a pity, because just looking at choices that she makes when she's 13, 14,
Yes.
and let's not forget the full version of the concerto when it was premiered was done days before she turned 16. So she was still,
Yes.
I mean, a kid
Yes.
again, and a kid of absolutely marvelous, multi-dimensional thinking. So to have an opportunity to present it and to have more people listen to it is an honor and a privilege.
I wanted to actually talk a little bit more about the second movement, like you were mentioning, because it's so unusual, right, to have a full first movement that is the orchestra is fully engaged, the piano part is so interesting, and then all of a sudden it goes right into the second movement without any, it's such an innovative approach, and we only have cello, so it's almost chamber music at times until the timpani comes at the end, and then again the third movement attacca right into, and so I wonder if again she was slightly inspired by Liszt's, concerto form in a way, because but it's not the same the way she did it.
It's not the same, but there are some parallels with the first concerto for sure.
Yeah, and she's very innovative, right?
Yes, absolutely. Must be very stubborn.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the rest of the program because we have Robert Schumann's Overture, Bride of Messina, which to my knowledge is almost never played these days, and I've looked at catalogs of orchestras and for some reason it's been abandoned, but it's such a unique work, and in a way I felt like it showed his sort of personality through that piece. He's it's so powerful and driven, but at the same time there is this uneasy searching of constantly, and he dealt with it his entire life. So it was sort of perfectly appropriate. Then you have that followed by Clara Schumann's, just embracing, loving, innovative but concerto. And then the second half year, of course, doing Brahms's Fourth Symphony, because I think that's sort of the ultimate testament of what he could do as a composer. But again, going back to the concerto, I feel like she has given us so many options, right, interpretively, and even from orchestral standpoint, it's not simply just a concerto accompaniment like it can be in Chopin's case, oftentimes. But I've noticed, like I said, either I've felt like there's been an approach of either really Brahmsian or very timid, let's not overpower the piano approach to this concerto, and so I feel like it's a great opportunity for us together to really search for something new together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the role of the orchestra is much more individual than, as you mentioned, and just merely accompanying. So it at times also becomes sort of a chamber music, and the orchestra part has a wonderful soloist, in the woodwind section, and kind of creates many layers to that. And I think she was thinking in a very multi-layered manner, and she understood how interesting collaboration between the conductor and the soloist can be, and so she has orchestra do kind of traditional opening and grand chords and tutti, but it also has really sensual moments and really something that almost sounds whimsy and can be interpreted in very different ways, kind of more rubato or romantically or more straightforward. So there's lots of room for interpretation, and to explore that is really an opportunity, especially with your ensemble and the members of it that are so attentive. I think it's going to be a great night.
Oh, I'm very excited. Yeah, I can't wait. I want to also mention, it's fascinating, right? How the Schumanns together ended up encouraging young Brahms so much to sort of propel his career. Because Robert Schumann has been reviewing his music, and then when he visited them, they were stunned by. I think they even openly declared him as a genius, which is, I mean, does not get any better than that.
Yes.
Having Clara and Robert,
Yeah.
saying that type of compliment. But it's just fascinating how they were really together, with all the problems, of course, of Robert and Clara being supportive, but they were quite the force,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
force. I wanted to ask you a little bit, because this year has been such a, like I said in the beginning, big Rachmaninoff year for you, and you've undertaken the monumental project of doing all of his piano works. How far along are you in the process?
Well, I just performed several concerts of the fourth program out of the six, which was completed huge tableau, and the two more programs that are left, the complete preludes, and the last one, which will be both sonatas with an arrangement of few transcriptions in that concert.
Amazing.
So I'm very excited, and I can't believe I'm already nearing the end of it. It's been a tough year of lots of work, but also, if you think about it, I was really, really lucky to not just be able to play all these solo piano pieces, but last year and this year I also had an opportunity to perform symphonic dances and both suites for two pianos and a piano for hand morceau, opus 11, and his arrangement of his own tone poem, The Rock, with my partner Ilya Kazantsev. So it's safe to say that we haven't played the Rhapsody yet, but most of the piano works we had covered. So it gives you enormous perspective into the composer, and I can say that it's definitely very different from just playing few works of the composer and kind of having ideas and insights about it, versus playing everything. And especially after I played in one of the programs, his first works when he wrote when he was like also 14, 15, really, really young and naive at times, and Tchaikovsky inspired things, but it gives you just enormous range of who he was. So.
Well, this will be a nice break, so to speak.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Doing the Clara Schumann
Yes,
in the middle of the Rachmaninoff. And for our listeners, I just wanted to mention one more time the date of the concert. So it's October 22nd at 3 p.m. in Merkin Hall in New York City at Kaufman Center. And we are just so excited, to have you work with you on this program.
Very much. I'm excited very much too.
And I like to, just mention, it's just so perfect because Clara, was such a phenomenal pianist and so charismatic, and so it's so perfect that we have you, performing her concerto.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Asiya, for finding time. It's great to have this lovely chat in the afternoon in New York City.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Until soon.
Until soon.